What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about X-Men Forever Volume 3, Come to Mother, Russia. This is by Chris Claremont, Tom Grummett, and Peter Vale, and this collects issues 11 through 15 of X-Men Forever. This volume is okay. It was not as disappointing as Volume 2 because I feel like this is starting to find its groove. I don't think that we're ever going to get anything truly amazing with this series. I act like it's still going on, but it's all finished and has been for a while. But I don't think this series is ever going to be truly amazing. I think the best that I can expect is mediocrity, and that sounds really mean, but so far I've read 3 volumes and none of them have just blown my mind. I think that when the series was first announced, everyone got really excited about getting to see what Chris Claremont would have done if he had stayed on the X-Men books, but after reading this volume and the others, I can safely say that he would not have done any of this if he had stayed on the X-Men books. And part of that is that he had already explained what he would have done. He at least talked about it a little bit. He didn't go into great detail, but he kind of talked about the Shadow King War and how that would have gone on longer, and eventually Charles Xavier would have died, and Wolverine would have been mind-controlled, all that stuff. He kind of talked about that a little bit, and so naturally he can't do any of that because he's already revealed all of that to the public. But also, we are seeing here that he now has the opportunity to work in his own little Marvel universe where no one else can tell him, no, you can't do that. So he gets to do things that he would not have been able to have done if he was working in the main Marvel universe in the 1990s. Spoilers, this volume kills off the Black Panther. He would not have been able to have killed off the Black Panther. They would not have let him do that. He might have said, hey, I want to do that, and they would have said no, because in the 80s, he actually wanted to make Nightcrawler the son of the Doctor Strange villain Nightmare, and whoever was writing Doctor Strange at the time, I think it was Roger Stern, he kept saying, no, you're not going to do that. You don't get to decide what my characters do. So Chris Claremont may have wanted to have killed off Black Panther at some point, but he wouldn't have been able to. But he gets to do it here because this is his own little Marvel universe that nobody else can touch. And then we also have it's weird, we have Everett Ross show up in this, and he didn't actually first appear in the Marvel Universe until the late 90s, well after Chris Claremont left the X-Men, but apparently a version of him exists in this comic, which I thought was a little weird. If you're going to pretend like this takes place immediately after 1991, then don't be giving us characters who didn't show up until 1998, but that's a minor nitpick. But anyway, we can clearly see now that Claremont is basically taking advantage of being in his own universe that nobody else can tell him what to do, so he's doing things that he would not have done if he had stayed on the X-Men books in the 90s, which is a shame because that is the premise that was sold to us. They were telling us, hey, what if Chris Claremont never left? And then they're giving us something very different. If they had just told us, hey, this is an X-Men universe that Chris Claremont can do whatever he wants in, I think people still would have bought it. So it's a little bit disappointing, I think, that they're telling us this is kind of like what he would have done if he had stayed on the X-Men books, and then they're giving us something completely different. But anyway, we get to see Colossus. He has now joined the Russian superhero team, the Winter Guard, and he is dating the Black Widow. That's another thing. I don't think that they would have let him do that if he had stayed on the X-Men books because Black Widow was still part of the Avengers at that time. But since Chris Claremont doesn't have to worry about what's going on with the Avengers in this X-Men series, he can say that Black Widow went back to Russia and so did Colossus. And that's a pairing that I guess makes a lot of sense, maybe. Black Widow is a little old for Colossus, I think. It seems like Colossus is either dating way under his age with like 14-year-old girls, or he's dating women who are like in their 80s like the Black Widow, because she was a child during World War II, and so she would be quite a bit older than Colossus, but whatever, I guess if they're happy, then they're happy. But anyway, we get to see this guy, the Cossack. He kidnaps Illyana Rasputin, who sometime before, I want to say it was at the end of Inferno, well before Chris Claremont left the X-Men books, Illyana, she was aged back down to a child. She was a child whenever Colossus was first introduced, and then she was turned into a teenager, or she aged faster in an alternate reality, and then she was a member of the New Mutants, and then in Inferno, she was kind of one of the big bad guys, and then she became a child again, and here, the Cossack turns her back into the age that she was during New Mutants, and now she's a bad guy, and she's calling herself Black Magic, and she tells Kitty that she wants to be this way. She didn't want to be a little kid, and this is her true self, and that's a little bit of a slap in the face for people who like magic, because one of the interesting things about her arc in New Mutants was that she was struggling with her demonic self, and this was corruption that was put on her by Belasco in the Limbo realm, and she's trying to be a good person, but it doesn't always work for her, and eventually she gets away from that at the end of Inferno whenever she becomes a little girl again. And so it's a little disappointing that Claremont is saying, no, she wants to be a bad guy, and she willingly becomes the Cossack slave or whatever. So that's a little disappointing, and again, I don't think that Claremont would have done this if he had stayed on the X-Men books. For one, I thought that he was more of a fan of magic than what he is here, apparently, because he turns her into a bad guy and then just sends her off somewhere, and then Kitty says, well, I'm not dealing with that, and Colossus says, don't worry, I'll find her, and then we'll fix everything. So I don't know if black magic is coming back in this series or not, but that was a little bit disappointing again. But then we get an issue where we get to see what the evil Storm is off to, because remember, Storm, it was revealed, she was working with the Consortium, and then she murdered Wolverine, and she had a teenage version of herself trapped in the closet, and then Evil Storm, she leaves, and Kitty actually scratches her on the face with her Wolverine claw, which is still stupid. I'm going to keep bringing that up, don't worry. But then we get to see that Evil Storm went to Wakanda, and she rekindled her relationship with T'Challa, and then she arranges for him to be murdered, and now she is the queen of Wakanda. And I'm very curious if they're ever going to touch on why Storm was working with the Consortium, because while Storm is my favorite X-Man, I'm okay with an alternate universe where she betrays the X-Men, but I would like to know why. Why did she murder Wolverine? Why did she have a teenage version of herself in her closet? Why is she working with these guys? I'd like to know. I'd like to know if she actually did have feelings for T'Challa, and if she felt like, well, this is the best way that I can protect myself, because now the X-Men and the Consortium are after her, so she needs to be in charge of her own nation so that she can kind of keep herself safe. Or if she was just power hungry and she's evil because, you know, blah ha ha. I don't know, because we don't really get a whole lot with her. This issue is kind of acting like maybe she's back to being a good guy, and then at the very end, twist ending, she actually released Eric Killmonger so that he could go and kill T'Challa, and then she kills him and acts like she didn't have anything to do with it. So I'm assuming we're going to get more with her later on. I do hope that they give us more information on why she's done what she's done, but at this rate, it's been 15 issues, and we've barely seen her since she left the X-Men at the end of Volume 1. In fact, I don't think we saw her at all in Volume 2, and then we only see her for one issue here. So maybe we'll get more with that. But overall, this volume is okay. We get to briefly see Kitty become evil, and that's kind of building on some of the subplots that have been developing since she got Wolverine's claw, where she's had a little bit more darkness in her soul. And here, she's briefly turned evil by the Cossack, and then she fights it, and that's how we kind of know that this version of Illyana wanted to be evil, because she doesn't try fighting it, and Kitty does, and she's able to get back to being her old self. But I'm assuming that we will get more with Kitty kind of being uprooted everywhere. Her old boyfriend now has a new girlfriend. Her father figure, Wolverine, is dead. Her big sister / mother figure, Storm, is evil. Everything that she knew is crumbling around her. But I feel like that's all kind of come to a head here, where she briefly turns evil and then she rejects that and goes back to being good. I'm really hoping that we're not going to get a whole lot more of Dark Kitty in this series, where she's grumpy and, I have a claw. I really hope that we don't get any more of her being that way. I hope that we get her back to being a little bit more of just the nice Kitty that she used to be. But we'll see. But anyway, this volume was alright. If we continue in this direction, I'll be pleasantly surprised, I guess. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Come to Mother Russia. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back later with another video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.